CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
And now, back to the man who's never afraid to throw virtual hands, the social media samurai, the tyrant of Twitter, the keyboard snatcher of souls, Tim Graham and Friends.
Welcome to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham with The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. And a bit of an unusual schedule this week with the podcast because it was such a fascinating weekend. Jonah and I wanted to recap. We had not only Chiefs at Bills, we had the Logan Paul, Mike Tyson fight, the Sabres, the ups and downs of that organization before they head on a road trip for the next 4 games, I think it is. UB at Eastern Michigan tomorrow night. And while the Buffalo News declared that UB is going bowling, I think they're going to need another win before they can really go bowling. They're just bowl eligible. That doesn't mean they're going bowling. They just have the requisite wins to maybe get picked for a bowl. You need to still win a little bit more before one of these bowls is going to pick a 500 Mid-American Conference team. We'll talk about that a little bit later. UB is at Eastern Michigan to face their former quarterback, who now is the Eastern Michigan signal caller, Cole Schneider. Jonah, Bills beat the Chiefs. I know that the Bills all week and still in the aftermath of the big win, 30-21, seemed even more convincing than that. Or excuse me, 30-21 was the final. Thought I got the final score wrong there for a second. It seemed like the Bills were in control. You didn't have to worry too much about the Patrick Mahomes comeback, although winning by 2 late. I mean, it was still in play, which is why Josh Allen's 4th and 2 run for the 26-yard touchdown was so pivotal. And we ran into someone last night who says it's maybe one of the greatest plays in Bills history, and certainly since the Bills Super Bowl era. And we had a hard time debating that, really. The initial reaction is, come on. And then you start thinking about it, and maybe it is. The Bills enter the bye and looking damn good. And maybe the team to beat in the AFC. What were your thoughts in covering the game yesterday, watching it unfold, and now that we've had a little time to digest it?
My main thought, something you already mentioned, just one of the most memorable plays and moments in winning experiences in Bills history, in the history of the stadium, home games. There's probably been playoff triumphs that maybe trump that, but they're more team efforts, comebacks, 51-3, things like that. I don't know if there's one walk-off play, even though it wasn't really the last play of the game, but that one kind of walk-off home run, game-winning shot type moment in Bills history in any game, and for it to happen against the Chiefs, happen at home, and be a 26-yard run on 4th down by the quarterback the way it was. I mean, he didn't hurdle anybody. That's probably the only thing that was missing from that, was something superhuman beyond, just running 26 yards and outrunning the whole defense. Other than that, I mean, it was a good game, but it wasn't the classic back and forth battle that these teams have had. There were sputtering moments for both offenses, and the Bills did allow the Chiefs to hang around and maybe have a chance to come back on that game if they didn't convert that 4th down, or if they didn't score on that drive. The Chiefs very well could have driven, I think, for the winning score right after that. But that's not how it played out, and it turns out to be, one of the all-time great moments and victories in Bills history.
My thoughts on watching the run, the Josh Allen, and this goes to the discussion. I ended up writing about it after thinking about it in the 10, 15 minutes after it happened. Um, and then talking with people in the locker room. And this is before we had our discussion at Buffalo's Best, which is a bar, by the way. I guess you say what Buffalo's Best is. People might not know what that is, but we stopped in. We were able to watch
Contacts and eyeglasses.
right. We were able to watch the fourth quarter of the Sunday night game. We ducked in there, and this is where we had the conversation about the greatest play in Bills history, or in at least in the last 30 years, maybe. And by then it had sunk in. I'd written about it. It was several hours after the game at that point. But as I'm watching Josh Allen's run, and I think Dawson Knox delivered the same sentiment that I used in my column, is we've seen Josh Allen do this. And so can it really be the iconic play when as it's happening, as exhilarating as it must have been for the fans and as critical as it was at that time to putting away the two-time defending Super Bowl champs who also happened to be undefeated so deep into the season, as you're watching it, it was just kind of like, yeah, that's what Josh Allen does. And so he crosses the goal line. Tyler Bass kicks the extra point to put him up 9 points and to put the game safely into two-score situation with 2:17 left on the clock. And Patrick Mahomes not looking like Patrick Mahomes for the first 58 minutes of the game. So yes, you've seen him drive the field and do all kinds of things, and the Chiefs get a call and maybe a break. But Travis Kelce, had done nothing the entire game. Xavier Worthy, after looking amazing very early, had tailed off in terms of his relevancy in the second half. A real boneheaded casual play along the sidelines that should have been a 40-yard pickup, and it turns into a incompletion. You just felt that obviously when Josh Allen scores that touchdown, game over. For me anyway. But yeah, we've seen him do it so many times. So as I'm trying to process and decide what I'm going to write about, it finally was one of those plays that as you digest the significance of it, the fact that the Bills haven't played as many decisive playoff games in recent years because they always seem to have to go to Kansas City with the exception of last year. And looks like they may have to do it again this year because even though they are 9-2 and the Chiefs are 9-1, the Chiefs have a way easier schedule. And that includes knowing that the Bills play the Patriots twice and the Jets once in their final 3 games. The Chiefs schedule is even easier than that down the home stretch. So it maps out that the Bills will probably have to go to Kansas City again in a couple of months. But yeah, that run, it is a signature run for the season. It's the type of run that I think wins Josh Allen the MVP because of the big stage, knocking off Patrick Mahomes. It didn't happen against the Tennessee Titans or the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was with Jim Nantz screaming, that is the play of the year in the NFL. And Patrick Mahomes cut to him on the sideline looking like, well, that'll about do it. That's tough to overcome. Having seen Lamar Jackson struggle against the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier in the day in another national game, the 1:00 game. I mean, who else is the MVP candidate? And, Jared Goff, maybe because the Lions as a team look so good, but Goff isn't doing the type of things that Josh Allen is doing, especially not with running the ball. And I think it just seems like it was time, and people have been looking for reasons to give Josh Allen this MVP. And every week he seems to back it up with something to say, yes, I do deserve it. And so as the MVP chants were booming throughout Highmark Stadium after that play, and as Josh Allen was jogging up the tunnel after the game, it was fitting. It didn't seem like it was just wishful thinking from a fan base that wants to see their guy win an MVP.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely how it feels and looks right now. I mean, I don't think you can win an MVP on one player in one game or on one Sunday when the other main contender for the MVP happens to not win the game. And Baltimore, he almost led them back. Lamar Jackson almost had a, kind of a comeback moment on national television Sunday. There's still a third of the season left, and the Bills are 2 games ahead of the Ravens right now, and it looks really good for their chances of being the 2 seed overall, and especially being the 2 seed and not losing out on a tiebreaker to the Ravens. But the Ravens have that tiebreaker, and I would say, depending on what happens over the next 7 weeks, Lamar Jackson still has a head-to-head tiebreaker against Josh Allen, and if it happens to be that the Ravens have a better record and Lamar Jackson still does have slightly better numbers, I believe, and probably will finish maybe with an MVP case on paper, as will Josh Allen. So it's not over yet, but it is hard to pick a third contender. Jared Goff's really just the quarterback of the best team in football right now. He's not necessarily having an MVP caliber season, and can't think of a wide receiver or running back, even though they hardly ever win that award, that's really in the argument right now. So yeah, it seems like a two-horse
Saquon
race.
Barkley, if the Eagles continue to go, and of course he has his signature play with the reverse hurdle that was amazing, but running backs just don't. I mean, maybe Derrick Henry even splits the vote in Baltimore, because who is the most valuable player with the Ravens this year? Some people might say it's Derrick Henry, so that might siphon off some votes there. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best point you made, or I mean, the whole point was good, but I think one thing you mentioned is that Josh Allen probably will get some favor from voters in a bit of a not lifetime achievement, but multi-year achievement, that he's played at an MVP level for multiple seasons now, hasn't really had the strongest case for MVP against other quarterbacks in previous seasons, but now maybe gets the nod because like Kobe Bryant only has 1 MVP, and he kind of got him after some of his best seasons. And this really is turning into Josh Allen's best season, but it's maybe something that his previous good seasons play into the thought that he finally deserves an MVP.
Well, there's 2 things working in his favor. I get your point that you're making with the lifetime achievement. I think that builds up the momentum. I think that if he does get it this year, there's still some games to be played, but based on the body of evidence that we've seen so far, if he gets it, he deserved it. He was the MVP. So I'll say that, especially when you take away the turnover aspect of it. He has been more of a game manager this year, which kind of seems strange to say about Josh Allen. But when you take a look at the way he's protecting the ball, dumb interception last night, he's had the occasional bad interception, but his numbers are way down, and voters would look at him as somebody who's either leading the league or close to leading the league in turnovers. How can you give him the MVP? So he's removed that from the equation. And the other part about last year, so Bills fans, there are a lot of people, and some media people too, some analysts, who looked at Josh Allen's season with the pure number of touchdowns and the way that he's able to do them, both throwing and running. And the Bills were a great team last year that won the division, and said that he deserved the MVP award over Lamar Jackson when you compared the numbers. And you could make a case when you look at the numbers comparatively. And maybe this is similar points that can be made about Alexander Mogilny in the Hall of Fame, which I wrote about last year. But Josh Allen, for a significant chunk of 2023, people were wondering what the hell's wrong with him. You're not going to win the MVP award when your people come around at the end and say, oh, yeah, that was a good season. When for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, what's wrong with Josh Allen? Why does he have that zombie look in his eyes? Why does he look like he's a robot sitting on the sidelines? He doesn't even look like he's enjoying the game. What happened to that devil-may-care swashbuckler player who stretched the field and test defenses deep? He got his offensive coordinator fired, because of the way things were going. Now, again, it was an organizational thing, that forces that were being applied on Josh Allen to be different, to play different. He was struggling with that. It was contradictory to his personality and the way he likes to play, but that cost him the MVP justifiably. And Lamar Jackson, even though his numbers overall weren't as good, he never had a slump, a swoon, anything like that. He constantly built. And that's what Josh Allen's doing this year. He started off strong, and he has continued to be marvelous, magnificent, otherworldly. So he's removing the excuses not to vote for him, the slump, the giveaways, all that type of thing. It's hard to make a case against Josh Allen because of the way he's played, because he's played so efficiently this year.
There's also the Stephon Diggs trade and the Bills' overall roster maneuvers and dead cap money that put more burden on Josh Allen this year to be even greater than he has been previously. And even just in yesterday's win, not having Keon Coleman or Dalton Kincaid, the two first-round draft picks that have been drafted to give Josh Allen more help and more weapons. So you take some of that away, and he's still, it wasn't his best game, but he played pretty well, and he made a lot of big throws. He had passing touchdowns that were pretty spectacular even before that last run. Ran smartly. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about his game was that he slid on almost every run,
right,
except for the short yardage ones prior to the end, and might have even kind of faked the Chiefs into thinking he was going to slide again because he already had the first down and then ran right through him. Almost, he broke 3 tackles while being untouched at the same time. It seemed like it was a weird kind of just slithering by. And won
Amari
the game.
Cooper pointed that out. I talked to Amari Cooper at the locker stall, and he said he'd been sliding all game. I assumed he was going to slide, but that's Josh Allen. He was talking about how he's getting to know this Josh Allen experience. It speaks to Josh Allen knowing the situation that at that moment, a 1-score game is not going to put away the Chiefs. At that moment, Josh Allen was putting away the Chiefs. And Amari Cooper's a weird guy in that if you listen to his words, he sounds like somebody who is amazed and is thrilled, and he can't, but to talk to him, he is so monotone, and his eyes, he kind of is one of those guys, he doesn't make eye contact. He kind of stares off as he's talking to you. And it's like, wasn't that fun, Amari? But then you go back and you read the quotes, and he's talking about how it's the most fun he's had in a long time because of where he's been. Having been in Cleveland and Dallas before that. I'm sorry if I disrupted your flow there, but I just thought that it was interesting that Amari Cooper is also like, wow. I mean, that was pretty cool that Josh didn't slide when even I thought he was gonna.
Well, what I was about to finish up and conclude with is that it was a play designed to get a first down, not a play designed to, get a touchdown, to throw deep. We really don't call plays for 26-yard quarterback runs, but
it was a pass play.
Right, it was a pass play. I was while you're talking to Amari Cooper, I'm in the Chiefs locker room listening in on Justin Reed, the Chiefs safety, and even Patrick Mahomes mentioned something along the same lines, that they recognized the play the Bills ran. Justin Reed even said that's what they expected the Bills to run, that it was a play they had run 3 times in the game prior.
I'm putting it up. This is the mesh play. People want to look at. This was the way I drew it up when I was helping to write the story. You see number 10 there. Khalil Shakir coming out of the backfield and running the out route to the right. That was supposed to be the intended receiver. Khalil Shakir was supposed to get it. Everybody else is running shallow underneath crossing patterns just to get the offense or get the Chiefs defense mixed up, confused, bumping off each other. And Khalil Shakir is supposed to get the ball. But that's for man defense. And the Chiefs, right at the snap, drop back into zone coverage. So that's why Josh Allen instinctively pump fakes to Ty Johnson, who is in motion behind him. That should be a squiggly line with Ty Johnson. Instead, that's not the route he ran. That's the motion he ran. That should be squiggly for you football X's and O's diagrammers. And he pump faked there because he knew he was running. But it was a pass play. And Josh Allen, that was just all Josh Allen. Did I do that right? Can you see that?
No, we couldn't see it really for almost the entire time.
Well, why didn't you say that?
Well, I didn't want to interrupt. You were going to roll.
Okay, so there it is. You see number 10, Khalil Shakir going off to the right. That was the intended receiver. And that's a play meant to beat man coverage, to get a quick completion for short yardage, a mesh concept to, as I put in my story, schmozzle the defense. And Josh Allen saw that wasn't going to work at the snap. So he pump fakes to Ty Johnson, who was in motion before the snap, and then just took off. There. I interrupted you for a long time, Jonah. I'm sorry.
You interrupted me so long, I forgot what I was saying, so we could just maybe move on.
You were in the Chiefs locker room talking to them.
Well, they pretty much said the same thing, that they recognized that that was going to be a pass play to the receiver out in the flat, and that they had stopped it 3 times, but Josh Allen had not tucked the ball and scrambled and ran on him either of those times, even though he had runs maybe out of different plays, different formations earlier in the game. And that's really Josh Allen's superpower, that when the play breaks down and he starts scrambling, he almost gets better and can do things that almost no other quarterback can do. And in ways, defenses seem to have a harder time bringing him down than running backs and receivers. Or tight ends. Becomes more and more of a weapon in the most unique situations where defenses aren't designed to defend quarterbacks in that way.
Mentioning the expectation, and the Bills were supposed to slip a little bit because they didn't have Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, and you even want to mention Mitch Morse and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. All of it that was baked into the prediction that the Bills might struggle. There were people there. In fact, there were some chuckles in the press box last night of there were some in attendance who had picked the Jets to win the division. I wasn't one of them, so I don't want to don't think it was me. But anyways, but it's to the conversation we were having about MVP. I think is similar to what is affecting the Steelers and their coach of the year discussion. And you would think Sean McDermott probably deserves coach of the year consideration. I agree. But with Mike Tomlin, what he's doing, you can't necessarily take that discussion and look for an MVP candidate out of Pittsburgh. And the reason being is that they changed quarterbacks. And you can't go with Russell Wilson because they won with a different guy. They won with their backup for a little while. So the Steelers have kind of self-destructed their own MVP consideration, which I'm sure they don't care about. I mean, there's really nobody on that roster you look at and say deserves it. Conversely, the head coach discussion seems to be pretty clear that it's Tomlin for coach of the year over Sean McDermott. But maybe that bolsters the decision for both, is that Josh Allen Mike Tomlin is what makes the Steelers go. Josh Allen is what makes the Bills go, and it's pretty clear cut.
Yeah, well, there's still 6 games left, or in some teams 7 games left on the schedule, weeks at least, and there's a third of the season left. And Josh Allen could very well be the MVP, and Mike Tomlin could very well be coach of the year, but things can change. Detroit, Dan Campbell, I think, might be considered for coach of the year, even force of personality and the way that team's winning. I think he's definitely a finalist. And remember, we have to go through that whole game where they vote on who's actually the MVP and the coach of the year. Then we narrow it down to finalists. Then we wait months before learning who actually wins the award. So we'll see who's the finalist and
right
how
before the
breaks.
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's a long time away.
Right. And, maybe there's an October surprise bombshell that changes the voting, late in December.
I think that just real quick thing that kind of hurts Dan Campbell is they've had a run up for a couple years. The Lions aren't surprising anybody anymore. People were just like, wow, Detroit's good again. That's amazing. Well, that happened in 2022. And 2024 maybe takes a little bit of that out of it because they were a Super Bowl pick for a lot of people, myself included.
Final record determines a lot for a lot of voters, I think. And if the Lions happen to run the table, if they're 16-1, I think that puts both Jared Goff and Dan Campbell in the discussion. And the Bills, while everything's going good now, and you project the Bills to have a good record at the end, if they go 3-3 down the stretch, if Josh Allen does have a 3-interception game, if maybe there's an injury or the wrist injury that he may or may not have sustained yesterday lingers, and his production dips, I mean, he's probably the MVP if he voted today, but the voting doesn't happen today. So we'll see how this plays out in a month.
Well, I'm interested in having this discussion in another year when we're talking about who else but Deion Sanders for the 2025 NFL Head Coach of the Year award. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight. That was this weekend. I just want to reflect on that for a little bit. And in fact, I had my Jake Paul, Mike Tyson lead all ready to go for the game. But Josh Allen's play made me move off of it. I was probably going to write something a little more circumspect, that if the Bills were to beat the Chiefs, it's like Jake Paul beating Mike Tyson. It's not that Mike Tyson. And with the Chiefs, it doesn't count until it's the playoffs. But the way that the Bills did it, to me, it did count, and it counted. Again, we just had the discussion for MVP, and that does matter. If it didn't matter, we wouldn't have just spent 15 minutes talking about it. But Mike Tyson, he shot and talked about it on Sal Capaccio's podcast last week with Joe Macy, the undefeated former #1 heavyweight in the world from the town of Tonawanda. Had a chance to then watch the fight the next night with Joe at Amherst Pizza and Ale House. Had a blast there, and it went like I thought it would. Mike Tyson is 58, and he was a guy that I was covering his fights 20 years ago, and lower caliber opponents were taking his best shot. That was what everybody was hoping to see. They were hoping to see Mike Tyson donkey punch Jake Paul out of the ring into the third row of the fans of ringside seating, and look like the Mike Tyson of old, and shut up this petulant kid. But there's a reason they picked him to fight. He's 58, and as we learned on Saturday, Mike Tyson tweets out that he almost died over the summer when they were originally supposed to have the fight and postponed it. I don't know how, obviously the jurisdiction or the sanctioning body in Texas, and maybe because it was considered an exhibition, they were able to get around it. And I know the stories are out there, but I didn't care enough to follow up. But whoever sanctioned this fight to give a 58-year-old the license to get in a ring and take punches from a 27-year-old dude who, albeit not an elite boxer, but as somebody who trains to do it and has been training to do it for years, to carry Mike Tyson, which he did. It was sad to watch. But as Joe Macy and I were talking there, as we're watching it, Joe's against it. I was kind of like, but it's a spectacle. And we were both stood there and we both watched it. You chose not to watch it, or were you just not around it? Were you not interested in it, or?
I didn't so much choose not to watch it. I was somewhat interested in it. But I was covering the high school football games out at Highmark Stadium. By the time I got back, I thought I was going to miss it. I thought that they'd get through the preliminary fights and onto the main card earlier in the night, and that I'd be out covering high school football. So I didn't really have plans to watch it. I thought I'd maybe watch the replay. By the time I got home, I think it had just started, and I was having some issues getting my TV working or getting onto Netflix. And I started seeing on social media people weren't happy with the stream and the buffering and Mike Tyson's performance. And it was pretty, it was a little bit like the election. And you could tell kind of early in the night that it wasn't going to go the way I wanted it to. And so I decided I didn't need to watch the replay, or I didn't need to rush to tune in. I mean, if I was off that night and I went to Amherst Ale House with you, I might have enjoyed kind of watching the overall. I guess the preliminary fights were pretty good.
They were excellent. There was one that was kind of gimmicky. The first one was gimmicky, but it was still competitive. Then there was an actual WBA welterweight championship match in which both fighters got knocked down and got up and finished the fight. So it was back and forth. There was a lot of drama in that. And then there was a women's bout right before the main event that was sensational. It was nonstop. And there was the chance of a stoppage because of a really bad cut, but it was just that was a warrior fight. That was good stuff. And so if you did tune in to watch and you're a boxing fan, if you weren't just tuning in for the spectacle, and that was another thing that Joe and I were talking about, those undercard bouts took away some of the guilt that we were feeling. It's like, okay, these are some legitimate boxing matches that we aren't just watching, sham entertainment here for all. This was legit sport. And so yeah, those were good. And I also think that probably taking away some of the sting of that fight is that people didn't have to spend a lot of money for pay-per-view on it. Yeah, yes, you do have to pay for Netflix, but you weren't paying the 60, 70, $80, whatever pay-per-views are going for these days to watch it and feeling like you got took. I mean, if you already subscribed to Netflix, and even if you signed up just for this fight, it didn't cost you much. You probably got a trial subscription for a few bucks, and you could cancel now. So, yeah, it was interesting. And, but yeah, it was, I guess I already used the word sad. To me, it's not sad. Mike Tyson knows what he's doing. He had a great, We were talking about it last night, Jonah. The quote that he gave, where there was this young. Oh, by the way, also the broadcast crew was awful. When you have Rosie Perez calling a boxing match, so let's just say that the Amherst Pizza Nail House had music playing during this fight because the commentating was horseshit. But there was I'm emphasizing that she was young because it's like I don't think she understood the full Mike Tyson experience as she interviewed him a day before the fight, talking about your legacy. And are you concerned about this fight impacting your legacy? And Mike Tyson gave a very Mike Tyson answer regarding what is legacy but ego. I'm going to be dust. I don't care. And in a few years, I don't think this is going to impact my legacy. Or he's like, he didn't even care about that. It was moot. There's no such thing as legacy because I don't care about it. And what people say about me when I'm dust in the ground, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think that was what this event brought the buzz back to boxing in a way, but it was solely, or not, I guess not solely. Jake Paul is a bit of a character and a big name, like it or not, in fighting right now. But also Mike Tyson, the character and the promoter, and being interviewed in the weigh-in and the advanced promotion of this fight.
Slapping Jake Paul in his heavy beard, by the way, something I mentioned on social media. Used to be, back when I covered boxing in the 90s, states wouldn't allow you to have a beard like that because it was considered a competitive advantage. It absorbs the blow quite a bit. I mean, it's kind of significant. What is in the material that's in, it's horsehair a lot. I mean, it's so the wiry stuff, the padding that's in a boxing glove. I mean, that's what's so different jurisdictions have laxed those rules because a lot has to do with MMA fighting, and a lot of the Muslim fighters from Eastern Europe and Asia who have the beard for religious purposes. Anyways, so yeah, so Mike Tyson at the weigh-in gets up and slaps Jake Paul, and everybody like, oh my God, these guys hate each other. Yeah, he slapped him in the beard. Jake Paul probably didn't even feel it. And in those slap fights, do they have beards? Do they have to shave? You should have to shave. Oh no, because those slapping you on the side of the head anyway. You're slapping it on the side of the head. But for all that, Jonah, I made a pretty good effort to cut you off many times tonight.
Well, let me just say, Mike Tyson did a good job of acting the part and looking the part and making many people believe that he was still Mike Tyson. And the mirage was that he could still fight like the old Mike Tyson, or at least in this kind of matchup with a YouTube personality. It wasn't considered a real boxer by many people. And I don't know how I consider Jake Paul as a fighter or not. But once the fight started, it was apparent that just because Mike Tyson can still talk a good game and play the character that, for better or worse, we've come to love in boxing, and people missed having Mike Tyson in a Tyson fight night. So they were able to deliver the Tyson fight night without the actual Tyson fight. I think we probably should have expected that's the way it was going to go, but I guess maybe I got all the anticipation and none of the disappointment by not actually watching the fight.
That's right. Well, and I think too, if you're somebody from a betting lens, when you realize that you can't bet on this fight anywhere, everywhere, I think you could bet on it in some places, but you couldn't bet on it in a lot of places, lent itself to the legitimacy of it, that people didn't know how on the up and up it was. And who's to say it was totally rigged? It could have been. I mean,
it would have been better if it was rigged for Mike Tyson to win. If it could have been in a pro wrestling environment and gimmick, so Mike Tyson ends his career with a knockout of Jake Paul and we never have to see him again, and maybe he gets Elon Musk with the left hand on the way out of the arena, that would be probably the more satisfying event.
Do we want to talk about the Sabres? They're about to go on this road trip. Maybe just mention briefly, because we'll talk about the Sabres later on this week when we have our more regularly scheduled podcast. They're about to, I don't know. Let's save it. Let's save Sabres talk.
Well, why don't we just recap it real quick? I mean, they're going through it a little bit, even though they've lost 4 of the past 6 games, and they're about to go on a West Coast road trip where sometimes with past teams, past coaches, they've played better out West than they do at home. And maybe it's something that will be good for them playing these games. Sabres after dark sometimes galvanizes the fan base in a small way watching on television, but they're dealing with injuries. Tate Thompson's been out the last couple of games. Matthias Samuelsson out. Jordan Greenway missed the last game. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was hurt for a little bit, and now Devin Levi's been sent down to Rochester because he didn't play quite so great in relief of UPL, and James Reimer's been signed. So the Sabres are figuring a few things out, but haven't been losing all of the games. And maybe if they can figure these things out and win a few on this road trip, they can come home in a better headspace than it seems like the fan base is in right now.
Lindy Ruff, according to, well, not according to just Matthew Fairburn. Matthew Fairburn just happened to write about it, but I guess he's brought back the standings to the dressing room as a way to some sort of accountability and keep guys on their toes to let them know what they're chasing, how far they're out. That was something that Lindy used to do back when I was covering them. I'd mentioned that to Don Granato one time, and he thought it was a great idea, but then never did it, as far as I know. Maybe did it. UB at Eastern Michigan tomorrow night. While bowl eligible, UB is not necessarily going bowling. Well, they got to win another game or two though to make sure, right? Well, another game.
Well,
one more win, and they're going to beat
Kent,
they're going to beat Kent State, or they should.
They should beat Kent State at home in the last game of the season when Kent State literally has nothing to play for and hasn't won a game in, over 2 years now, or almost 2 years. But that being said, and a seventh win will guarantee that UB is among the teams selected for the bowl game. I think UB is probably in a good position now, being one of, not one of the first MAC teams, but one of the earlier MAC teams to become bowl eligible, as these bowls are figuring out. The MAC has 6 bowl tie-ins. I think there's 6 bowl eligible teams right now, but being one of the first 6 to kind of claim your real estate in when the MAC's putting teams in different bowl games is advantageous for UB. And right now, they're 6-4. They're ahead of 500. So I think that as that starts being evaluated and bowls are scouting teams, they're looking at a team that has 2 more wins than it has losses. And just, the MAC teams that are not bowl eligible yet are not being evaluated for bowls quite yet. And when UB, there might be a MAC team that doesn't get in, but when that's been UB, they had to win their last 3 games to get to 6-6. They were the last team to really get to that 6-win threshold. So I think that's why it's a difference. And UB can still win this game at Eastern Michigan, win out and get to 8-4. I mean, that's not, and possibly even get into the MAC championship game if that happens. It's not a very likely scenario, but it's not something that's off the table and unlikely for UB to finish on a run and do that and get to 8 wins before the bowl game.
Eastern Michigan is favored by 1.5 or 2 points, depending on where you might want to place that bet, if you can, because it being the state of New York, where most of our viewers and listeners are seated or standing, raking your leaves right now. Turns out that raking leaves while listening to Tim Graham and Friends is a popular pastime. Jonah, what's the scouting report on former UB quarterback Cole Schneider? What should we be looking for in this tomorrow night?
Well, he's familiar to UB, the team, and anybody that's watched the team, fans and people that have watched UB on TV. He's 3rd in the MAC in passing yards, a little bit lower in passer efficiency, but there was a point earlier in the season where it seemed like UB did not have good quarterback play and probably missed that Cole Schneider transferred out of UB while Mo Linguist was still the coach, and that maybe that doesn't happen with Pete Lembo, or if the timing of things are different, or he didn't choose to come back like Sean Dolak did. But I think there's some hope among you, or I guess this is an alternate universe, but belief among UB fans that could have played out differently if the timing was different. But CJ Agbana's played much better over the last 4 or 5 weeks for UB, even though the defense has led to some losses in that span. So it's not a, longing for the quarterback that left UB anymore. But he's not just UB's former quarterback. He's a local from Southwestern that played, local high school football and then for the local college for a couple of years. So it'll be an interesting television event, I think, to watch UB's former quarterback and a Western New York kid play against Buffalo. And it's, midweek action. UB's already had a thrilling comeback and an overtime win in that one. So at the very least, hopefully it's an entertaining game that's on television right before the Sabres after dark. So you get about 6 hours of Buffalo sporting viewing experience Wednesday night if you want to do that back to back.
Big matchup in fantasy football. Jonah and I are facing each other this week, and Josh Dobbins' late touchdown really didn't need the touchdown, the Chargers, and they needed the points. but then they score the touchdown. Now I only need 2 extra points or a field goal from the Cowboys kicker to win tonight. Jonah is done. Jonah, what would you say to me benching the kicker? What kind of compensation would we be looking at there? And is that ethical? I mean, is it, it's clearly unethical, but is it acceptable in fantasy football? Probably not. I bet people would be upset about it, but if you've made it this far in the Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK CPAs and Business Consultants podcast, then maybe you could put a stop to it. But if you're in our league and you haven't, then shame on you. Jonah, compensation, is anything on the table?
You know, I don't really want to engage in this nefarious collusion to begin with. And I think our commissioner, Joe Buscaglia, would be on top of that pretty quickly. If you notice, you pull your kicker out of the lineup at the last minute. I mean, I'm hoping, as much as the Cowboys have struggled in recent games, that a shutout's on the table and perhaps you get 0 points out of the kicker or some missed kicks out of the kicker, and maybe I win that way.
Brandon Aubrey is a go then for the Graham Central Stations. That's not my real team name. I don't know that I should mention what my real team name is. Just want to take a quick look at league standings, because I know based on WGR's ratings that people love fantasy football talk. So no one absolutely is rolling their eyes or has turned off this. They want to hear about my fantasy team. But league standings, I'm a winner of 3 straight. This will give, if Brandon Aubrey can make a kick or two, will give me 4 straight wins and put me in solid tie for second place, I think, after starting off 2-5. Yeah. I'd given up on my season. I was going through the motions. So that's why I guess I don't feel too badly if maybe there was something on the table for me to go ahead and bench Brandon Aubrey. Jonah, thanks for this. Thanks to everybody out there for watching and listening to Tim Graham and Friends. Please subscribe. So, Jonah and I were contemplating a live broadcast before kickoff yesterday. So subscribe so that way you get notifications for if we do go live on YouTube. Give us a like, a comment, star system, rate us, do whatever. Find us in the phone book, prank call us. We don't care. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you a little later in the week.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.